I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture.
So today, I thought we would chat about the Gilmore Girls. This is a show that I watched a lot growing up, and every year I often have it on in the background. I think for me, it just brings back a lot of nostalgia coming home from school and it running on ABC Family. And because I grew up Chinese American, I've always thought that the vision of America portrayed on Gilmore Girls was something that was like fairly foreign to me, but so idyllic, almost like a fairy tale. Jennifer, I'm curious, have you ever watched the show? What's your relationship with the show?
I think I've seen an episode or two. Like, I know who like Rory is, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I watch the show a lot. It's gotten to the point where now every fall, Avery, my husband, will ask, oh, hey, it's time for Gilmore Girls, isn't it? And we always start from the early seasons, which are by far my favorite. And the show is 7 seasons long, debuting October 2000. It presented this rosy, wholesome vision of America. It featured a single mom, Lorelai. She's the main character. She did this pretty courageous thing of leaving her very privileged upbringing because she got pregnant at 16 and running off to this town called Stars Hollow, which is this small town, and raising her daughter there on her own without the support of her family. And she didn't have dreams, I'm sure, of becoming a maid, but she did become a maid. That was the only job she could get. This hotel owner gave her the job, and then by the time we see Lorelai, she's 32.
That's it?
Yeah, because she had her kid at 16.
Oh my God.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, and she's a manager at the hotel now. So basically, we come to learn that she has essentially worked her way up from being a maid and has worked there for the last 16 years, building this life and career for herself. And that life, that job has afforded her a house. She has like a pretty nice house.
Yeah, I do remember that from the show. It's like, it's a cute house.
Yeah, they have a great
and they live
porch.
Like this cute life.
Yeah, by no means is the show portraying she's like rich or anything, but she is very much a self-made woman and she's been able to fully support her daughter and her lifestyle. I think for me, when I was growing up and I saw this example on TV of Lorelai working this job for a really long time and it being a part of her identity of this really complete life, and then seeing how my parents had worked at their jobs for so many years, I kind of thought, oh, that will happen to me. I will go out into the workforce at some point with my whatever degree and I'll just work somewhere for like 10 years. And I will feel all the things I think I'm supposed to feel, right? Which is that I will feel fulfillment. I will feel like it's a family. I'll feel like taken care of. I'll feel like I can move up in the ranks.
That's so cute.
So I think, yeah, in middle school and high school me, as I'm watching the show, I was like, oh, this is the American dream. Like, this is why my family came here. This is what we signed up for, right? Like, you work a job. It doesn't have to be like the fanciest job in the world. It can pay you a normal, average American salary, but then you can go and buy a lovely house with a great wraparound porch, and you can afford to eat takeout every night if you want to eat takeout every night, and you can have a good life. And I think now that, I'm turning 30 and home ownership is very far out of reach.
Well, to be fair, you do live in New York City.
True. But, home ownership is at an all-time low for our generation.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't really feel like the life they were able to live in that show is possible anymore.
So I feel like there's been some conversation around this where it's like you watch the TV shows from like back when we were kids and I'm like, how did everyone have such a nice house? To your point, it's like we look at what looked so normal and middle class back then today and we're like, that is a $2 million home that Lorelai lives in.
Totally. I mean, I was looking at some research the other day just as I was thinking about this topic, and compared with earlier generations, millennials have more debt, a lower net worth, and a worse chance of making more than our parents. So I think we've all felt it over the years. Like high school was the 2008 financial crisis, right? And all of the ramifications of that housing bubble bursting and the depression has made it so it's a lot harder for our generation to accumulate wealth and then also afford houses because housing is at an all-time high.
I took a class in college. I was an economics major, and the class was Economics of Marriage and the Family.
Oh.
And it was really interesting. And we talked at length about how people were getting married, legally married, maybe not even having a wedding or like declaring a domestic partnership much sooner and moving in together before they were emotionally ready to because economic force. It was too expensive to live on your own.
That's
It was a
interesting.
really interesting trend. Yeah. I've seen TikToks of moms who now have children that are like 22, 23, and they are backtracking on their own pull yourself up by your bootstraps rhetoric. So they're like, oh, you just get a job and you work and then you'll have your first apartment and then I'm going to kick you out at 18. Haha, kind of joking in that way. There was this one mom I'm thinking of in particular whose son graduated with an engineering degree. And they lived in some medium-sized city. It wasn't like in New York or anything like that. And he was making, I think, $70,000 right out of school, which was a very good job. He was proud of it. They went to go find him an apartment in this mid-sized city, and everything was like $2,000 plus. And she was like, he can't afford to have health insurance and live in his own apartment. I either have to supplement his income or he has to live at home. And so he did live at home for a few months and he wasn't even able to save up enough to move out and still keep his health insurance and pay for a studio, 1-bedroom apartment. And she was like, this is insane. This is not the same thing as when we were growing up.
Yeah, I feel like even if you are able to land a job that does pay you well and you don't have to worry about your rent or your health insurance in the short term, you just can't count on those things lasting forever. I mean, Lorelai literally left home at 16, was able to find a place to live and get a job and raise a baby and provide a really stable life for her. And yeah, so I think for me, like what Gilmore Girls represents is two parts, right? One is the idea that you can work somewhere your whole life, a job that sustains you, one that comfortably pays your bills, that you can count on. And then the second piece of just building a community and building a home for yourself feels harder than ever today. Is this vision of Gilmore Girls America dead? And I just want to like talk to you about these two topics and think through, is it true? Why does it feel that way? And where does that leave us?
Yeah, I think this question of community is so interesting, especially in the post-COVID world. Going remote obviously has a huge impact on that sense of community, not only within the job, but also within the larger city or neighborhood community as well, I think, because so many people moved. And so you have all of these new people in these smaller communities, and we're not going out to an office. So like there's not really a lot of third space or just like organic interaction throughout the day. Cause like unless I make an effort to leave my house, go to a coffee shop where everyone else is also working with their headphones on, like I'm not gonna meet anybody. Like I don't think I've organically met somebody. I can't even remember the last time that I organically, maybe like at a bar in the girls' bathroom is the only place that you can meet somebody now.
Jennifer, you moved to New York City right after you graduated from Notre Dame. And then you lived there, I think, through the pandemic, right? And then left and moved to Nashville. And it sounds like Nashville is now your forever home. How are you thinking about community now differently than you did in New York?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like part of the reason that I wanted to leave New York and move to a city like Nashville was for community. I find that essential. Well, it's also kind of like a little bit of my personal psychology because I moved around a lot growing up as a kid. And so I never felt like I had a home or a home base. I don't have a lot of friends from when I was in second grade or something because we would just move. So setting down roots somewhere is essential, I think, to my happiness. And I like the charming community-driven feel of the South and these more mid-size or like smaller cities than New York City. So that was part of the motivation for moving to Nashville. However, I think a lot of people felt that way and a lot of people moved here and it blew up very quickly. And part of that is good because there's a lot of new people that want to make friends. And then part of that makes it just feel disjointed because you have a lot of people from like California and New York that are kind of bringing with them the more isolated culture that I felt when I was in New York, where it's like you don't talk to people in line at the grocery store. I think when I moved here in 2020, people would just chat with you at the checkout counter. If you bumped into somebody in the aisle, like looking for pasta sauce, people would just chat. And this was like during COVID when there was masks and people were wanting to distance too. Now more than ever, you have to make a very conscious choice to build community. And one of the ways that I've done that is start a book club. So I've met like 10 girls through starting a book club. It was with 2 other friends and they just texted people that they knew in the city. And most of these girls don't know each other, but everyone is just so eager to meet people and do something that's not going to a bar. We just get together and we chat and everyone loves it. So I think you have to consciously do things like that to build community now.
I'm curious, since you said that you moved around so much growing up and didn't have a lot of stability in terms of building communities when you were younger, how did you know that that's what you wanted growing up? Was it from watching movies or media? Or how did you know that was something you even desired?
Maybe part of it was media, but I've always found the home to be a cozy concept. And I loved going back to my grandparents' home where my dad grew up, and there were things from his childhood in that house. it felt like just so cozy going back there. It was like a time capsule. And I never had that. Like I always lived in new build homes. Like everything was just constantly changing and always new people in and out of my life. And so I wanted to have a friend that I've had for 10 years. When I was like going into college, I was like, oh, I don't want a friend that I just met 3 years ago. I want like the 10-year friend.
Yeah.
And I'm like finally to an age where I have the 10-year friends from college. So those relationships are super important to me. But I think there's something about being either in a city or a home or with people that have seen you grow and understand you deeper because of that. That is really essential to just life in general. And you see people who are in their like 50s who are friends from like when their kids were in kindergarten together, and they go on trips after their kids go off to college because they've been there through their entire lives. And I think that's really sweet. And I want that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you should watch the Gilmore Girls because that is what Stars Hollow is. Like,
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, so Stars Hollow is this small town near Hartford, and everyone who's lived in Stars Hollow has been there for generations, and you talk to everyone, you know everyone. There's the local town gossip, there's local town handyman, there's the local town grocer, etc. One element is you've got the great community, right? So you've got friends, but it also is this mini self-sustaining economy, and you have all of these like small business owners who seem to truly be able to make a great living doing what they're doing. There's the character Luke, who owns a diner. His diner is literally always packed, right? I mean, we know how hard it is to start a restaurant in New York City, but
Yeah.
Luke is the only shop in town that serves great coffee and great food, and so it's always busy. Taylor Dosey owns this grocery store, and that's his business, and he's supposed to be self-made but quite wealthy, owns a bunch of businesses in the city. So he's made it. You've got Lorelai, who is working at an inn, but then eventually opens her own inn, and she's able to make it. You've got Rory's friend Lane, her mother, who's an immigrant from Korea. She runs an antique business. So it's this town of entrepreneurs, right? It's this town of...
The interest rates must have been really low.
People are not working like corporate jobs in Stars Hollow. They run their own business. They seem really fulfilled by that. They're able to make a living, and the town sustains the businesses. I just don't know how many of these places there are really left. Maybe there are, but I'm just not exposed to them. And I feel like that's part of why I watch it every year. I just feel like it's this memory of what America was at one point. I have to believe that at one point those things were possible, but it just feels like you can't just do those things anymore.
I was just in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley for one of my friends' weddings, and walking around in Nyack, New York, I honestly felt that way. And I told my fiance, I was like, I want to move here when we have the funds in the bank to get a second home or like even just raise a family here. I want this, because it was like no big box stores. It was all community driven. And so I think it exists in some places, but you really have to seek it out. So maybe underneath the corporate layer of America where we have the Walmarts, there is still community to be found if we cultivate it. What do you think?
When the show Gilmore Girls came out in 2000, culturally, America was different. It's hard for me to say because obviously I was a kid, so maybe I was just naive and I hadn't yet experienced all the things I've experienced now as an adult. But I think for our parents' generation, from what I remember, my parents had a really great experience working at their companies when I was growing up. And we did go to these colleagues' parties and I would meet them and they would remember me. And I would go with my mom to bring her kid to work day. And everyone would ask, oh my God, Lucy, we're so excited to see Lucy. Like Ellen, my mom, Ellen, has your photos on her desk. And I mean, you know, perhaps it's because I don't have kids yet. I'm just turning 30, but in my professional life in the last 10 years have not met a colleague's children or been at a company that had to bring your kid to work day. And so I don't think people are building those communities as deeply as they once were at work.
I have those same memories from my dad. I would go to bring your child to work day and have the same thing. Everyone knew me. Like my parents still have friends from when my dad was working in his like 40s. I've seen them within the past few weeks. Like that's how close they still are. So I don't think I would have anybody like that from my professional life. It is more like you're in this professional realm versus my real friends. And actually at Elevest. So I used to work at Elevest a few years ago, which is a female-founded investment firm for women. And they have very, very strong family values, as you could imagine, being women who were not only mothers themselves, but planning to be mothers and wanting to create a company that was really inclusive to that. And they actually did have Bring Your Child to Work Day. And it was really cute. Like I would have like my QA engineer and my engineering manager, like they would bring their daughters and little sons and stuff. And it was adorable. But yeah, that did feel like way more community driven, but it was a conscious effort to do that. And I don't think I've felt that conscious effort at any other company that I've worked for.
Totally. Yeah. I think the way that companies have changed is, I think, fascinating. IBM, for more than 7 decades in the late 1960s, they were a leading company and they refused to lay off workers.
What does that mean? Like they would never downsize?
Yeah. So IBM became a leader in how companies treated workers in the late 1960s, and their culture was called cradle to grave, meaning that if you got a job at IBM, the company would take care of you forever. IBM at the time was a family company. The CEO and founder, Thomas Watson, and his son, Thomas Watson Jr., ran the company, and they very much believed in taking care of their workers and told their workers, don't worry, you will never get laid off. And I think as a worker, hearing that is...
that is bonkers.
That creates a sense of security, right? Like that creates, wow, this is a family because you can't get fired from a family, right? And I feel safe that I could maybe mess up or have a less stellar performance review, but I would still be able to keep my job. And it enables me to plan for my life and get a mortgage and have confidence that I'm going to have that job to pay off this mortgage. Whereas I feel like for our generation, even if you're making great money at a job right now, that company could have a layoff tomorrow. Then you'll be in a really tough spot because you do have a mortgage if you took one, or I think it is preventing a lot of people from even taking that leap in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because if today a company were to come out and say like, we're family, we'll take care of you cradle to grave, we would all be like, okay, what's the catch? Like that would not fly anymore. We'd be like, okay, so you want me to like go to your pizza party and dedicate 80 hours of my life per week to this cause, and then we're quote unquote family. All right. Like we see through that veil so quickly.
Yeah. Obviously, IBM wasn't able to keep that culture, right? By the time the 1980s rolled around, the business was really struggling to compete against Microsoft and PCs. And they actually hired an outsider CEO for the first time. A new person who wasn't a part of the family was running the company, and he made cuts. So the culture kind of died there. And
that's so sad for those workers who bought into that vision.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
I mean, I do think there are workers who for 20 years had that, which I think in our world is like 2 years feels like a long time to be in a job.
When I left my last job, when I told them I was leaving, they were like, wow, we can't believe you've made it this long. And I was like, well, it's been like less than 2 years. What do you mean? The trend definitely has been being more overt about being a capitalist company, right? Companies are trying to make money. And it seems like in the past, they were being more shrouded about it. Like, we're a family, we care about you. Whereas now it's like, you know what? If the business doesn't support your job, it doesn't support your job. You as an individual doesn't matter as much. And there is a very clear downside of that in my mind, which is you don't get the community, so you don't get the maximum output of your worker because their heart and soul isn't into it. And of course, passion does matter for output. So even if you are looking at it in a purely utilitarian way, having someone be invested is utilitarianly positive. And you look at something like the Gilmore Girls small town example, where everyone has these small businesses in their community so they support each other, and that in turn fuels the economy. In severing community and emotionality from the quote-unquote capitalist machine, you're actually slowing down that machine. I feel like we've swung too far into the utilitarian way, and we need to go back to center, where we're like, we do care about you as a person, but yes, this is a business. And yeah, I don't know where the answer is there, but it definitely feels like we've gone from one extreme way too far into the other extreme.
Yeah, I think COVID unconsciously forced a lot of companies to recognize that their employees are full humans, because all of a sudden everyone was working from home and you could hear and see their kids or their dogs or whatever, or their partners walking around in the background. But I remember when that first happened and people were like, wow, this is so refreshing, because I think my experience of the corporate world has been like really, really cold. You come to work, you're productive, and then you leave.
Exactly. Yeah, the culture has 100% shifted. I think the job hopping and the quest for the next best career has definitely contributed to that. There's external reasons for that with the economy, as we like to bring it all back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, people can't move up the ladder like we used to be able to. People at the top aren't moving to make room for people in mid-level. So if you want to get ahead, you got to leave. And so when you're constantly hopping around, just like me constantly moving when I was younger, you can't build roots and you can't build those relationships that make it feel like community.
Yeah. And why would I choose to show loyalty to a company that doesn't show loyalty to me, right? I'm going to leave as soon as I get the next best opportunity.
Yeah. And as soon as revenue's down a little bit, they'll probably snip your job anyway. So
yeah.
Just kidding.
Pressing. So where does this leave us? I guess I opened the episode because every year I try to go back and watch the Gilmore Girls because it's really nostalgic for me, but it also is like I want to believe that that is possible still. that kind of life where you're fully a well-rounded human. You've got a great family, a great relationship, great community and friends, and also fulfilled at work. I think a lot of people want that. And a lot of people are struggling to find if that's even still possible. When the show Gilmore Girls came out, I think there were people who watched that show and related and said, this is like my life, or this is how I feel surrounded by my neighbors and my coworkers. Because even traditions for Christmas, bringing cookies to all your neighbors. I mean, I remember in Michigan that being a really foreign thing to me because obviously my family culturally, we were Chinese. That was not something we had experience with. And then one Christmas, our neighbors who we weren't friends with our neighbors, you know, you'd say hi if you saw them watering their lawn, but we didn't go over to their house for dinner or anything. But people were like dropping off cookie tins at our house for Christmas. And I remember as a kid,
we always did that
loving
too.
That.
We were like new kids.
Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't know, maybe that still happens. I don't have a house, so I don't know. Maybe I just need to buy a house and then I'll have neighbors and I'll experience all of these really heartwarming American traditions.
Honestly, I feel like they're happening in Nashville. I go on walks and runs in my neighborhood a lot and people have block parties all the time. It's really cute. And they put up little signs in the yard and it's like our block party for Halloween or like 4th of July. And I'm like, that's so cute. I'm glad that's happening. And actually a few months ago, Ruben, my fiance, was like, Jen, you got to come over. There's a little kid having a lemonade stand outside and we got to go give him money. So I came over with some cash and we like bought some lemonade and they were so excited. So I think some of that does still exist, but it is way more rare. But it's so heartwarming. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when I see Girl Scouts in New York City, it is a capitalist machine they've got running. It is no longer a small stand. You know, they're like, we'll take Venmo, we'll take PayPal, you got Cash App, like anything, right? And
the Girl Scouts are the capitalist machine. Oh my God.
So I don't know. Yeah. It sounds like there's still pockets, like in your experience, right, of this kind of idyllic community. It's just, maybe I got to move out of New York City to experience it.
Come to Nashville. We'll throw a block party.
Yeah, and then our kids can be friends and start a lemonade stand together.
Our kids can be capitalist Girl Scouts.
They'd have to move to New York to be the capitalist Girl Scouts.
Okay. Well, this was a really interesting combo. I had no idea Gilmore Girls had such a cultural nerve.
I mean, now you've got to
need to go watch it now.
If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Full transcripts and show notes are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.